and welcome to Have I News for You, and the start of BBC Two's Comedy Zone is in half an hour. In the news this week, in Russia, Boris Yeltsin wonders why he's the only one to be affected by an earth tremor. In Belgrade, there are signs that the Serbs are running out of ammunition. And during a practice kick-around, Graham Lasso begins to regret going on Chelsea's tour of Nigeria. On Ian Hislop's team is a man who is host of Countdown, has asked nearly 30,000 questions. Sensibly, Carol Borderman said no every time. Richard Whiteley. And with Paul Merton tonight, a journalist and broadcaster who's fought strongly against nepotism in the media, a stance which is shared by his brother, the Coronation Street actor, and his other brother, the TV scriptwriter, David Aaronovitch. In round one, we normally deal with some of the minor news stories of the week. Ian and Richard.
This is the peacekeeping mission. That's a hole where the American president should be. That's a missile, one of those smart missiles that knows it's not going to work. And that's a mass murderer. And that's Yeltsin, wondering what day it is. Meeting Milosevic. Yeah, this is the most depressing, dismal war, where we managed to get it right early on by threatening Milosevic. Very tough threat, this. We said, look, if you don't stop killing people, we won't send in any troops, which is obviously fairly scary if you're a dictator.
And how many ultimatee?
Does anybody here speak English? Or is something being sponsored by the UN? Or should it be UN?
Angus hasn't said slobbered on Milosevic yet, has he?
Neither of you.
No, I know.
22 ultimatee they've had so far.
I think it's quite a difficult war to fight, because the generals aren't allowed to lose anyone from our side, but they're not allowed to kill anyone on the other side either. It makes it quite a tough war to win.
It's also the first war where they've actually had cameras on the missiles as well, so we can look forward to ITV's world's worst bombing incidents.
When's that going out?
8:30.
8:30?
Yeah, Saturday night.
Instead of the 10 o'clock news, I suppose.
Yes. It was introduced by Keith Chegwin, actually, so good. And whose Air Force is back by popular demand?
The Luftwaffe,
yes,
has joined in on the right side, which is certainly a development if you're looking for hopeful signs.
I think they did take off and make for Coventry by mistake. But, yes, it is NATO's bombing campaign against Yugoslavia. The crisis worsened last week when Yeltsin told NATO he'd pointed all his nuclear missiles at the West and was ready to start a third world war. Then woke up next morning saying, I was a bit pissed last night, I hope I didn't say anything stupid. Paul and David, take over now.
Who's that clown? Oh, it's...
The one with the yellow skin is Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah. This is about Rupert Murdoch wishing to take over Manchester United through the auspices of B Sky B and not being allowed to.
Yes. And how much is the club worth? How much are we going to pay?
637 million.
Yes, very nearly. 23 million.
That's for a football club?
Yes.
Why would you pay that?
Well, he wouldn't, obviously, for Southampton Football Club, but... given
That is per season ticket, isn't it?
Yes. So who made this announcement?
Stephen Byers.
He's the new Peter Mandelson, except you can mention Stephen Byers.
He is famous for one thing in the past.
He's an
Yes, he couldn't
immensely-
add up, could he? He couldn't
right.
say what's 58 times 7 or whatever it is.
No, it was 8 sevens, wasn't it?
Yeah, don't ask me for good Ian.
He said it. What are 8 sevens?
I'll tell you in a minute. I'm just hesitating because I'm not getting the answer through my earpiece.
So has there been any split in the press coverage at all of the...
Yes, all the Murdoch papers say it's a terrible idea that Murdoch can't control Manchester United, and all the other papers aren't controlled by Murdoch say it's a very good idea that Murdoch's not controlling Manchester United. I'm being sponsored by how many times I can say Murdoch and Manchester United in the same sentence. I've already raised 37p for guide dogs for the blind. Or is it blind dogs for guides? I can't remember. Who are the all girls that dress up. Yes, blind dogs for the guys.
It is New Labour's decision to block the Man United deal, which has angered Rupert Murdoch and means that he'll now have to buy another club. After the decision, ecstatic Man United fans celebrated in the streets of Truro and Tunbridge Wells. Ian and Richard.
Well, these are the truckers, the annoying truckers. They were annoying, I suppose, to people on the roads in the cities on Monday. That's Steve Norris, the former Transport Minister and the head of the Road Haulage Federation. Taxis joined in at King's Cross, and there was no lorries to take little piggies home, so they had to scurry around until...
So why are the pig farmers coming out in support of the truckers?
It's all about VAT on fuel, isn't it?
I think it's much the same thing. And there's one other...
56. 887 to 56.
Yes.
Just come to me.
Yes. Correct, but late. Cabbies are the other people who've, of course, come out in support of the truckers. There was cabbies, pig farmers, and people queuing up for the Monet exhibition. Who apparently cheered as they went past.
They cheered the truckers.
Something to look at.
Yeah.
Slightly more interesting than the Monets, too.
Water lilies.
And again. And again, and again.
And so you see, the whole thing is just about Monet, isn't it? It's all about Monet.
You mildly embarrassed about that one?
Yes, you obviously haven't seen Countdown.
You did mention Stephen Norris. What's his involvement?
Don't ask me on this programme for questions about Stephen Norris, right? Because I know what you're all thinking.
What?
What?
Oh, you haven't.
No, I haven't.
I knew he got around.
I know.
Honestly.
No, I know I haven't, but I know half a dozen who have. But no, but he was... Anyway, when he retired as an MP...
He's a bit of a trucker, Norris.
He said, I'm going off to earn some serious money, so he became chairman of the Road Haulage Federation.
No conflict of interest there. Transport Secretary running the lorries. Nothing fishy or dodgy about that.
Yes, this is, of course, the truck drivers' protest over the sharp rise in road tax and diesel prices. The lorries and HGVs have caused havoc nationwide, especially in Cornwall, where roads were further blocked by hundreds of locals running out for a glimpse of the giant houses on wheels that move without horses. London cabbies joined in with the demonstrations, although police used a special technique to disperse the thousands of black cabs. They sent a Rastafarian out to hail one. And finally, Paul and David.
These are the two people who got married. They were introduced and then got married. BRMB, is it? BRMB, the Birmingham radio station, decided to sort of put together two people, get married, see how they went on, sent on honeymoon, come back. It hasn't worked out.
And why hasn't it worked out?
They'd never met before they got married.
No, he had a one-night stand after meeting up in a pub with a dental nurse, and they went off for an evening's flossing.
What I thought was pretty rich was this couple who got married solely to be on local radio and then to appear on television. And they were asked why they split up, and they said it was media intrusion. And he was a professional love rat, wasn't he?
I don't know if
He loves rats professionally. That's one way of getting him out of the sewer system. Sort of like Pied Piper, except he doesn't play on a flute. Anyway, never mind.
So who instigated all this? BRMB Radio.
Yeah.
And was this the first time it had happened?
Didn't they do it in Australia? With similar results?
And didn't Elizabeth Taylor do it with a couple of hers as well?
I think Prince Charles did it once, didn't he?
Yes. And what was inscribed on the wedding ring? Did you read about this?
On loan.
96.4 FM. After 12 weeks, it was reported that they weren't talking, having sex, or enjoying each other's company. You'd think they'd been married for years. Eventually, they gave up and admitted to radio listeners that everything they said to one another seemed shallow and vacuous, after which they were immediately offered the Radio 1 breakfast show. At the end of that round, the point situation is rather like Ian's team, all square with 4 points each.
Very good. Good. Yeah.
And so to our odd one out round, in which a monkey with a pin has a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right. So let's see how he does. Paul. Your hip dudes are Robert Robinson,
Yep.
Jeremy Paxman, Michael Winner, and Richard Whiteley.
Things in common that they have, Cambridge. Richard, you were at Cambridge, weren't you?
I was, sir.
They must be very proud of you.
They are. I'm an alumni.
Michael, you're what?
And I'm an alumnus.
Are you?
Didn't he discover America?
So I think Michael Winner is as well. I don't know if there's anything to do with it, but let's establish what they have in common. Michael Winner, Jeremy Paxman, I think, also is a Cambridge man. Robert Robinson, I don't know. His name is English for Magnus Magnusson. Did you know that? I would say on the face of it, Michael Winner's the only one that's not hosted a popular quiz show. But it can't be that, because that's too easy.
Yes, and a slightly stupid answer. No, so quite
Why is it slightly stupid?
Have you been taking something, Angus?
The piss for 9 years. Is Robert Robertson the only one out because behind him there's a giant owl looking at him? That's what it is.
My view is this. Both Paxman and Winner and Whiteley were not only at Cambridge, but I hate to say this. Will you say it for me? We were all editors of Varsity.
We were all editors of Varsity. It's an undergraduate student publication with a circulation of 1.
And it's also the correct answer. Now, Richard, you edited it in 1965, didn't you?
Yes, I did, yes.
Yes. Do you remember what your first lead story was?
Yes, John's man sent down. In those days, you were sent down for having hanky-panky. And this John's man was sent down for being found having hanky-panky in the afternoon by a porter.
What is hanky-panky, anyway?
Hanky-panky.
Chinese domestic.
But weren't you slightly appalled by all the sex?
I was really totally appalled by all the sex. There was I on Sunday morning.
Not getting any.
But surely, Richard, in your student days, you must have found some woman who'd give you 2 from the top and 1 from the bottom. Surely there would be.
But this was before you were known as Twice Nightly Whiteley.
Yes, it's now once yearly nearly. So. Absolutely.
A former Varsity editor, Michael Winner, was asked recently about the first thing he does when he wakes up. He said, I walk a few steps to the balcony of my bedroom, look down at the flowers in the garden and think how lucky I am. 2 more steps and how lucky we'd be. David, Idi Amin, Winston Churchill, Colonel Gaddafi and Colonel Sanders.
Well, they're all military in some way, aren't they? They're self-made officers, aren't they? Idi Amin made himself Field Marshal and Uganda officer, but actually started off as a Sergeant Major in the King's African Rifles. Colonel Gaddafi started off as a Lance Bombardier in the Camel Corps. And Colonel Sanders was only a private in the chicken
industry
when he first came. Am I right?
You're in the right area.
Is it where they trained?
Explain.
There's a fine tradition in this country of training complete lunatics at Sandhurst. Idi Amin was there. Colonel Gaddafi, was he at Sandhurst?
He was.
He was at Sandhurst, another proud alumni, or alumni, as they're known. And Churchill, I think, was at Sandhurst. So the odd one out is Colonel Sanders, who wasn't trained there.
Is the right answer.
Very good.
Yes, very good. Where is Amin now?
Bournemouth.
He's in Saudi Arabia.
He's in Saudi Arabia, yes.
He come out and complained about oranges recently.
Well, he eats 30 a day, so I don't know why he's complaining.
Somebody should tell him they're not the only fruit.
Colonel Sanders died in 1980, and his body was cremated, but not before it had been coated in a special blend of 11 different spices. Ian, Tony Banks, Pythagoras, Paco Rabanne, and Glenn Hoddle.
Paco Rabanne's just seen something interesting. I think this is to do with reincarnation, because Glenn Hoddle was sacked for believing in reincarnation. Pythagoras, it was his theory originally. He's responsible. The transmigration of souls from animal to human. He believed in that.
That's not true. That's not Pythagoras' theory. How do you calculate the square on the hypotenuse using the transmigration of souls?
Pythagoras did maths as well as philosophy, but he did believe in that. So they all believe in reincarnation. I think the only person who doesn't believe it is Banks.
Yes, I think you got all the elements of that. The answer is that they all believe in reincarnation, except for Tony Banks, who said of Glenn Hoddle's notorious outburst, anyone who actually feels that a disability is somehow being visited on you from another life must frankly come from another planet. So reincarnation's rubbish, but aliens from outer space is okay. And finally in this round, Richard, Robbie Williams, Prince Charles, Alan Milburn, and Carol Vorderman.
I think my first thought is that it could be to do with the millennium, and I'll tell you why. Because Robbie Williams sang a song called The Millennium. Now, Alan Milburn, I think he might have something to do with the dome, but I'm not quite sure. So I'm groping here, and Carol Vorderman. Carol Vorderman, of course, earns a millennium. So.
It really hurts, doesn't it? Is it making mistakes with maths? Because Carol Vorderman made a mistake on your show, I believe.
Yeah.
She added a naught to her salary and they paid.
It's an educational question. It could have included Claire Rayner, Richard Branson, or Paul.
They've all got thirds at university. Apart from Robbie Williams.
Yes, because Prince Charles got a third.
Carol got a third. Alan Milburn got a third.
I'm going to give you the answer because you're very close to getting it. The answer is that they've all failed their maths O-level.
I didn't take maths O-level. So why have you included me in there? I got CSE grade 5, which is one level above a monkey. I did not fail the O-level, I did not take it. Right. In the same way that I've never failed a HGV licence.
No, I was only
trying to get a reputation as a thickhead. I'm trying to keep it quiet.
Only referring to the people, obviously, whose pictures we can see. Those three people have failed their maths O-level, except for Carol Vorderman, although she did manage to get a third-class degree, as did Richard.
All right. Okay.
What's a third-class degree mean? You've got to stand up or something? What's that? Third class? What's that?
After one live performance, Robbie Williams declared, "People have been self-conscious for so long about looking like a twat. I know that on a lot of occasions I do look like a twat. Sometimes I go a bit too far with twattism." At which point the Queen moved along the line to shake hands with him. Which mental agility marks the end of this thorough examination, and to differentiate, the winners are at the moment Ian and Richard with a fully integrated 11 to the others 4. Round 3, we're proud to announce, features an ingenious bastardisation of a countdown favourite, to wit, and I use the word wit in its loosest possible sense, the numbers game.
Oh, no.
Anyone who's watched Countdown won't need me to explain the rules. So, each panellist picks a number from the board, and when 4 have been chosen, they then have to use those numbers to make a mystery total.
I'll have that one there. This is where your technology lets you down, isn't it? I'll take top left.
Which is number 4, and it also has a picture of the Queen Mother. So for an extra point, can you tell me what the connection is between 4 and the Queen Mother?
Hip replacements.
No, over here, any
Is
idea?
it swallowing fish bones?
It's the size of her overdraft.
It is. She's overdrawn to the tune of £4 million. It's not clear where all the money's gone. Admittedly, she only drinks the finest traditional beverages, none of that unleaded rubbish. But yes, so you've got 4, right? That's yours. David, another number.
I want the one right in the middle.
Right, the one right in the middle is 28, and it's got a picture of John Prescott. What's the connection between the figure and the face?
Is it sort of like if you take 28 and turn it around backwards, that's 82, and in 1982, that was 17 years ago, and at the age of 17, he joined the Merchant Navy?
It is, in fact, the number of seconds John Prescott spent at Peterborough Station for a photo call. This wasn't an official visit, he just got off to let the train suspension have a rest. OK, Richard, you're next.
I'll have the one under the Queen Mother, please.
That is number 17, and that, in case you needed telling, is Chris Woodhead, who is the Chief Schools Inspector.
When he was a schoolmaster, it is alleged that he had a bit of hanky-panky.
Not her again. She must have had a bike.
With
Gets around a bit, doesn't she?
with a school pupil aged 17.
Yes.
It is alleged.
According to whom?
His wife.
Ex-wife.
How on earth would she know?
Exactly. The fact that he invited the 3 of them to become a ménage à trois, I think, should be not taken as evidence.
No.
Nor the evidence of all the other teachers who said he did as well. I think we'll stick to alleged, because he's clearly not guilty.
Thank you for clarifying that. And Ian, finally,
I'll have the one under Prescott.
which is 75, and it's the picture of a Brit Award.
Is that the year the Brit Award started?
No, it isn't. It's
The amount of drinks most people there had had. Hey, Robbie Williams won.
it is, in fact, 75 is the number of MPs who attended this year's Brit Awards. So we have 75, 17, 28, and 4.
Yeah.
And using these numbers, our panellists have to make the total mystery number, which our high-tech digital randomizer reveals now.
I feel so at home here, it's wonderful.
Using these numbers, our panellists have to make the total mystery number, which our high-tech digital randomizer now reveals as 283. You have 30 seconds, starting now. How near have you got?
We've got it. We've got it.
Spot on. And how far near have you got?
56. 4 times 75, 300, take away 17 is 283.
Yeah, that's what we got.
Ah, yeah, after I've said it.
OK, Richard, tell us how you did it.
75 times 4 equals 300.
Right.
Take away 17.
17.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fantastic. 283.
rather familiar way of doing it.
Brilliant. Well done. So that means, I guess you get the points. After all, that's congratulations then to Ian and Richard, who get all of 2 points, bringing the total to a nail-biting 13-6. And now a round in which 1 or 2 words are missing, in particular laughter and applause. So let's away with NATO needs what?
A leader.
Part-time cleaner.
You?
It is, in fact, a fig leaf. This is a metaphorical.
Is that going
fig
to work on the Serbs, is it? We're going to go in and drop fig leaves, are we?
leaf. Relatively useless, I would imagine.
That'll scare the pants off of them.
If they scared the pants off them, they would need fig leaves.
Next, Jackson's what with Fayed?
Football fun.
Yes, football thriller is in fact. This is a reference to Michael Jackson, who went to see Fulham. What's Fulham's nickname? Any idea?
They're called the Fuggers. They're owned by Mohammed Fayed, who's got a problem with the word fug.
Right.
And when the team comes out, everyone shouts, "Come on, you fuggers!"
Next, cat-eating giant owl leads what?
Ground invasion.
Leads to pea green boat disaster.
No. Wildlife threat is in fact the answer. And lastly, Clinton is found in what?
Wife's bed.
Trousers.
No, something that you might be quite familiar with.
Carol Borderman.
It's rather worrying given that I was looking at Ian.
Court of law.
Contempt of court, yes. All of which means that at the end of tonight's bout, this week's dogs' dinners are Paul and David with 8, while this week's cat's whiskers are Ian and Richard with 17. But before we bid them a fond good riddance, as a final tribute to Richard, a specially devised, or indeed specially nicked, word game, the Conundrum. So, of what is this an anagram? First one to get it gets it.
Fanny oils. It's a lubricant. For when you're in the mood, but your body says no.
But of what is Fanny Oils an anagram?
Is it an anagram as well?
It is Ian Hislop.
It's the right answer.
Yeah.
So Ian Hislop is a nickname of Fanny Oils. That's worth repeating ad infinitum.
And I leave you with news that there's consternation outside the Houses of Parliament as Peter Mandelson is run over by a taxi. In an attempt to impress immigration officers with his understanding of British traditions, Mohammed Al Fayed puts on a special Easter parade. And finally, there's an embarrassing incident at Heathrow as some intimate body piercing sets off the metal detector. Good night.
BBC Two's Comedy Zone continues with a dinosaur on the loose in Red Dwarf next, and on BBC One, go behind the scenes of an exclusive dating agency in 5 minutes.